And I can remember Barwick telling me that in the 1930s, if a fellow on the floor got a brief, 6 blokes would work on it because the other 5 had no work to do. And I think that lots of people, I think probably in all walks of life, not only the bar, thought that getting a job which gave financial security was very important. That when I went through Fort Street with classes of very bright boys, much brighter than I was, I thought, they would become school teachers because that would be guaranteed. It was an honourable profession, of course, but it was also a financially secure job, and I think that affected the bar. People, I let you into a bit of a secret. I was offered appointments to the Supreme Court and to the Federal Court and knocked them back. At the time that I did knock them back because I was doing well financially then, and I reckoned that if I stayed at the bar I'd still be able to do well financially, so I didn't have the sort of the drive to take a job on the bench because of the need to financially secure my future. You could fairly, unless your health failed or something like that, you could be fairly confident when I went on the bench in 1981 that if you'd been a silk for 10 years, if you'd been making good money, if you had a stream of work, then barring health hazards, you were likely to continue to be able to make a good living. I don't think that was the case, going back 20 years, so to speak.
Some, of course, like Tom Hughes QC, did not aspire to the bench because, as he said himself, he felt he didn't have the temperament.
Yes, Tom would have been a very good judge. So I don't agree with him that he didn't have the qualities for being a good judge. He did, I think. But he'd led an interesting life. He'd been Attorney General. And he was the top of he very quickly, when he came back to the bar, which would have been about 1970, I don't know whether he told you why he did come back to the bar.
He did.
Politics, but he came back to the bar at the top of the bar, so to speak. And I think myself, he was wise to do what he did, because he was top of the bar for 20 years, if not more, and I think that's a great life.
Going back to the 1950s, in those early years of your practice, you were saying you took whatever you could. How did you keep body and soul together in those financially rather more difficult days?
Well, I wasn't married. I lived at home, and I just didn't get married. My restriction on me getting married was not having enough money to get married. I got married after I'd been at the bar 4 years, and by which time I had just enough money to do what was thought to be necessary in those days to support a wife. These days, women, of course, can very often be a bigger income earner than their husbands, but I kept body and soul together. I mean, I must say, my practice did take off after a couple of years. And I can remember now that when I did get married, my income was about £2,500 a year, which was good money, good money in those days. Talking of money in those days, is the one major case I did with as junior to Garfield Barwick. I'll never forget. It was in the High Court. It was an accident I got into it, but his fee was £350 £500, and that was, before I got married, would have been about 1953, and he was then bestride the Australian bar, but his fee was £350.
I wonder what he would have thought of today's silks and how much some of them charge.
Well, he would have been envious, I think. I don't think he died a rich man. They're sort of things that you could find out from Ellicott, but I don't think he was regarded as necessarily being a huge charger of fees. But he would, I think, be pretty envious about people making a couple of $1 million a year, as some of them can these days.
Bob Ellicott and Garfield Barwick are related, of course.
Yes, cousins.
They're not close?
They related, they were cousins, but Barwick never did Ellicott any favours. He didn't think that, I presume he thought he shouldn't, but he would have thought very well of Ellicott. He was, Bob was a Methodist lay preacher in his early days at the bar, and Barwick would have not hesitated to sort of take a rise out of him for doing that sort of. Bob was and has been a lifetime teetotaler, and he's still, I admire him, he's still maintained his interest through what was the Methodist Church he's been a leading light and still is in whatever they call it up there at the cross, the Wayside Chapel.